Aloha and welcome to Hawaiian IANDS. I'm your host, Sean Lether, and we're so glad you're here with us. If you're watching us on YouTube, please make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. Today's event is about transformation, real, powerful, life-changing transformation. Our guest is Diane L, whose journey from addiction to deep spiritual awakening is nothing short of extraordinary. For nearly 30 years, she has helped people break free from limitation and step into peace, purpose, and connection. She's a hypnotist, NLP practitioner, teacher of A Course in Miracles, and facilitator, trainer, coordinator for IANDS. She's also the author of Meditations for Miracles, 5 Steps to Freedom, and My Life with Spiders and Other Divine Creatures. You can learn more about Diane at her website, which is dianeross.com. So let's go ahead and dive in and get to know Diane. Welcome, Diane.
Thank you. I am absolutely thrilled. And I do want to thank you so much, Sean, because Sean was kind of amazed that tonight is the absolute first time that I have ever shared my story. I do workshops, I do private sessions, I do classes, I do, but I've never shared my personal story. And so I am so thankful, Sean, for you inviting me to do this, because it's like, when I'm conducting sessions, I don't really talk about myself. So this is really kind of weird for me. So I'm not used to talking about myself. So I told Sean, I said I wanted to kind of start in chronological order and give you little glimpses of my life, because I went from a raving alcoholic drunk addict to teaching A Course in Miracles. I mean, go figure. So my very first memories of spiritual experiences began when I was about 3 or 4 years old. And a little backstory: my mother had what we now know is postpartum depression after each of her 5 children. Back then, they didn't call it that. They just called it she was having a nervous breakdown. And so she went into a mental hospital for about a year after every child was born. So after I was the third child, I have an older sister and an older brother, who my older brother's crossed, and 2 younger brothers. They both crossed over. And I was the middle child, of course, And but I was fortunate enough when my mother was in a mental hospital that my dad was my primary caretaker for about a year. And I adored my dad. I mean, he was like the most wonderful person on the planet. And he was a gardener, and, he was into plants and flowers, and, he was very wise. He was my saving grace. I call him my saving grace. So one night he was putting me to bed, and he shut the lights off, and I had my eyes open, and I was just stunned at what I saw in the dark. I saw all these glowing lights, and it was so beautiful. It was like I was just awestruck. And I said to my dad, "Daddy, what is that?" And of course, he's a father, you can't let your kid go around. I mean, what do you do with a kid like that, And so he said to me, "Well, that's just your eyes playing tricks on you." And I just accepted it. I said, "Oh, okay." So that was the first time that I remember seeing things with my physical eyes that other people didn't see. I had another experience in the backyard, and this one, it makes sense now. And since my book about with spiders, it's like I'm connecting all the dots, looking back. So I'm out in the backyard. My dad was this flower gardener, had all these flowers, and I look on the ground, and in my little 3 or 4-year-old mind, it's just a child's mind, I see this bug and it's lying on its back. And in my little child's mind, I saw this bug with a human face. And I was just thrilled. I was just like, wow. So I go running back in the house. And I go, Daddy, Daddy, I just saw this bug and it had a human face. I don't know if I used the word human or not, but. And he said to me, now, Diane, I was like, and I got the message. I got the message. And then the third experience that I remember at that age was again with nature. I we had moved to one of the very first subdivisions in Southern California, Bellflower, and I was across the street. And you know how little kids are, they just sit in the street, I mean, there was no traffic or anything. And I'm sitting on the curb of these people across the street. I see all these ants. I mean, there were thousands of ants, and I could hear them with my physical ears. I heard these ants, and I was just entranced. I didn't tell anybody about that one. You learn after a while, well, maybe it's not such a good idea to tell this. So I didn't tell anybody about that one. But then moving forward, my parents got divorced. We were in Catholic school. We got pulled out of Catholic school. I thought we were going to be excommunicated. Back then it was like, this was in the 50s. And back then, as I was taught in Catholic school, well, if you got divorced, you were excommunicated. So it was this huge, big secret. I told one friend, got put into public school. And, but what I didn't know, I became angry with my mother. And what I didn't know with her postpartum depression and me being separated at that young age, I didn't know the grief that I had. I was unaware that, when you remove a baby from its mom, the baby's gonna experience grief. So I had this unconscious grief toward my mother that I was not aware of until yesterday. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but I was not aware that I had this unconscious grief regarding my mother. And I blamed her for the divorce, because I overheard her telling our neighbor that, that she and my dad were getting separated, 8 years old. And I overheard my mother telling this. Of course, everything was a big secret. You know what I mean? I learned very young, you don't repeat things, you don't ask about things, you just, So after my parents got divorced, that just kind of put the whole kibosh on. From my point of view, as a young child, I just became angry. I covered up my grief with anger, and I became this angry, stubborn little kid, Fast forward to 1966 when my brother got killed in Vietnam. And by that time, my father had remarried. I moved in with my father, and my brother gets killed in Vietnam. And I just went into a rampage. I was so self-destructive. I mean, I had no coping skills at all, none. And nobody, my father and stepmother absconded into their bedroom. And, my sister was married by that time. My two little brothers were living with my mom. I had no adults, nobody to talk to, or at least that's how I felt. I mean, I might have been able to talk to my dad. I don't know. I don't think I ever tried, or my mom. So that's when I went on this. I started drinking on the weekends, and after I graduated from high school, I got into this horrible car wreck. I was drunk. I had half my face ripped off. It was from my nose. I was, those little VW bugs. I had one of those little VW bugs I think it was 1957 or something, and it had one of those sunroofs, canvas with metal bars, and you have to do the crank, to open up the sunroof. I bought it from a girlfriend for $100. I thought I was really tough, driving around this little VW. But I was drunk as a skunk. I was visiting a girlfriend in Oceanside, right out of Camp Pendleton, and drunk as a skunk, going around the corner, my little VW, and rolled down a little hill, and the crossbars caught me. I'm so lucky I had my eyesight, and I'm so lucky that I didn't. It didn't open up my sinuses. It just missed opening up my sinuses. I actually got a better nose. This nose actually is better than the nose I had. So that was kind of cool. But at the time, it wasn't. Because I had these blood red scars, I looked like Frankenstein's wife. I was a mess. I was a mess. And it's so funny because I was not going to go to college. This was in between high school and I was like, I was done. I was just done with the whole education. I was done. Didn't like high school. I mean, I was just, you know. So my stepmother says to me, well, if you don't go to college, then our insurance isn't going to cover your medical expenses because you have to be a full-time student in order to fall under our medical insurance. So I had to go to college. Which talk about, I look back, what a saving grace. You know what I mean? I don't know what would have happened, but I wound up going to college. I met my first husband, and this is a really interesting story. He was a microbiology major, which is a real difficult major. And I was an English major, which is easy. But so he was talking to a friend of my sister's and saying how difficult it was, how he had to study and it was so hard and everything. So this man says, he was an older man. By older, I mean he was probably in his 40s, So he says to my husband, you want to get straight A's? I'm listening to all this, right? He says, you want to get straight A's? And my husband said, yeah. He says, be in my house 8 o'clock Friday night. Well, of course, I had to tag along. I wanted to get straight A's, right? So I tagged along, and he taught us both how to meditate. And this was the kind of meditation. Now I know it was called dhyana meditation, which is what they call a one-pointed meditation or a concentration meditation. And it was very regimented. I mean, we had 2 weeks. And he taught us how to meditate with these LPs, right? And, we went to his house every week for, I don't know how many weeks, couple weeks. We had to learn this one technique. And then after we learned the one technique, then, we'd come back and we'd learn the other technique. Everything was very regimented and very, patriarchal. I mean, I was the girl, he was mainly instructing my husband. I just kind of tagged along. But the thing of it is, it was a marvelous turning point in my life because I learned how to focus my attention. And at that time, I was going to college full time and working part time to put myself through college because at that time, I didn't know about student loans or scholarship. I didn't know about any of that stuff, which is probably a good thing because I'd probably still be paying off my student loans, right? So I was going to college full time, working part time, and meditating 20 minutes 3 times a day. I meditated 3 times a day, 20 minutes religiously for 7 years. I missed one meditation in that 7-year period. And it was so traumatic for me to miss that meditation that I can tell you the meditation that I missed. Now, I'm not recommending this. I'm not saying that anyone else should do that. I mean, that's very rigid. That's a very rigid thing to do. But it got me through college. And I didn't get straight A's. I think I got 1B. I got a bachelor's in English, and then I got a master's degree in secondary reading. Anyway, long story short, so I taught school for 3 years in Anaheim. I was the reading teacher. And and then my husband and I, of course, back then in California, I guess it's still the same way, I don't know. But back then it was like, oh, California, ugh, we got to move out of here. This is, everybody badmouths California back then. God, everybody's moving out of California. So everybody, right? I mean, what's the population in California now? Look how I talk. But it seemed that way. There was this mass movement out of California. Back to the farm, survival. This was the 70s. We moved from California to Sweet Home, Oregon, 1974. I taught at Sweet Home High School, set up the reading program. Long story short, then my husband and I got divorced after 3 years. I left Oregon, came back to California, threw out the baby with the bathwater. It was like, well, I won't go into all the details of my first husband, but it was like I was angry, of course, because even though I had learned to meditate, I hadn't developed the life experience. I hadn't developed the inner skills to cope with anything, I mean, I was still a baby. I was just such a baby. So left my first husband in Oregon, moved back to California, started drinking and drugging. And gosh, it was such an extremely short period of time that I was drinking like every night and smoking marijuana every night. And I was actually teaching at Inglewood High School because I was pretty high functioning. You know what I mean? I mean, because I only drank at night after school. So decided I wanted to get out of teaching and moved to Arkansas, where my dad had left California in 1970, moved to Arkansas, where he was originally from, bought this little country newspaper, and then bought another little country newspaper, another little country newspaper. I think he had a maximum of 4 altogether before he sold them and went down to 1. But in my little mind, I thought, I will get out of teaching. I will move to Arkansas. I will go to work for my father's newspaper, and everything will be hunky-dory. So I quit my job. This was after school. I mean, I did finish the year. But in June, I quit my job, gave notice, moved to Arkansas. My dad wouldn't hire me. It wasn't that he wouldn't hire me. My stepmother wouldn't hire me, which is really smart. I probably would be dead by now if I had gone to work there, because my drinking was so out of control. That's when it was extremely out of control. So what I did was I went to work for the competition because he wouldn't hire me. Of course, it was friendly competition, right? So I went to work for this little weekly newspaper in Murfreesboro, Arkansas, home of America's only diamond mine. I was actually associate editor there, but that's when my drinking and smoking pot got really, really out of control. I mean, if I wasn't at work, I was drunk or high. And that's when I had my second major car accident and broke my neck. It was just, I shouldn't say everything, but almost everything that I did that was traumatic and horrible for me was self-inflicted. You know what I mean? It was like I just generated all these calamities myself. I mean, it's like I did it to me. But I was extremely fortunate. Not the only long-term result, but I didn't wind up a paraplegic or a quadriplegic. I did lose 20% mobility in my neck, and I had other little side effects that are not real pleasant. But I survived. And do you know, I still didn't sober up. It's like, everybody thinks, well, that you should have learned from that.
Yes.
Certainly that would have taught you. No, I'm telling you, addiction is not logical. It's not. Of course, I quit meditating. I was too ashamed. I was too full of guilt to meditate. How could I meditate when I was drinking and smoking marijuana? Right? It's just, I would. So anyway, met my first husband after I broke my neck. I went to work for a daily newspaper in Arkansas because again, I was high functioning. You know what I mean? It was like I was what they call a high bottom drunk. I didn't wind up in the gutter. I didn't lose everything. I was still very high functioning. Went to work at the Hot Springs Sentinel Record, and it was third high in the newsroom. It was, but it was very stressful. But the stress had nothing to do with it. It was my own inability to function. Again, no coping skills. My coping skills were alcohol and marijuana. That's how I coped. So met my first husband in a bar. Of course, we wound up. I wanted to get out of the situation that I was in because I think on a deep inner level, I knew I could not sober up where I was. Hot Springs is a relatively small town. Everybody knows everybody. I mean, working for the newspaper, if I had showed up at a 12-step meeting, I couldn't, in my little pea brain mind, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. But anyway, so he moved down to Florida where his mother was, and I went down to visit him on one of my vacations, and we wound up getting engaged. I moved to Florida, and that's when the drinking and drugging got so incredibly bad that I was having blackouts every single night. And if you don't know what a blackout is when the person who is drinking and drugging appears to be normal. I mean, I would drive in a blackout, for God's sakes. I mean, I could tell you horror stories. But it was so bad that I would wake up in the morning and have no memory of what happened the night before. And apparently my husband and I would get into these horrible fights. Well, we were both drunk. I think one of the reasons that we married is because we were the only ones who could put up with each other's drinking and drugging. I mean, nobody would put up with mine, and I wouldn't and nobody would put up with his, but you get us together, we were a team, So my last drunk, we're talking every night, getting so drunk, I had no memory of what happened the night before. We get these horrible fights. I wake up in the morning. And I was fine, and he was furious at me, and I never knew why. So I woke up my last drunk, Halloween, 1983, and I don't know what happened. Okay, I was in a blackout. I don't know what happened, but I know that I woke up in the morning. He had gone to work. I woke up in the morning. I was really upset. I knew something terrible had happened. I knew I did something terrible. I didn't know what it was. I called up my dad in Arkansas. And I said, Daddy, what do I do? And he said, call. And I'm not supposed to say the name of the program in public. He said, call the 12-step program. Now, this is 1983, right? Look up I said, okay. I mean, I was done, but I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know how to help myself. So I look in the phone book, I call up this 12-step program. They had a meeting at noon. I drove to the meeting, found 2 sponsors. They told me, I needed to check myself into treatment. I didn't know any of this stuff. wound up in treatment down in Lakeland at a hospital, spent 28 days there. From there, and this is real funny. I go to the AA meeting. I'm crying through the whole meeting. I mean, I couldn't. Tears are I'm just sobbing, And so these two ladies, they're like angels on earth, drive home with me, pack up a suitcase. I leave my husband a note. He's at work, right? They felt like they had to get me out of there, because if my husband came home and I was still there, I probably wouldn't go into treatment. And they were probably right. So I wrote a note to my husband and I said, "Dear Randy, I am going to alcohol treatment. I will see you in 28 days. Goodbye." Can you imagine? So, so I did. I drove down to Lakeland. I didn't, check into the hospital. By the time I get down there, it's like 10 o'clock at night, and the sweetest, kindest people on the planet. Oh, I just, these people who work with alcoholic and drug addicts, they're just like angels. I mean, I don't think I could have done it if they hadn't been for their kindness. They were just extremely kind. Checked into the hospital. And this is the really interesting part too. 5 days later, my husband checked in to treatment, to a different program. They wouldn't let him in, they wouldn't let us in the same. He had to go to a different place. He went to like the Ritz, where they had all these gourmet meals and everything. I was in like a hospital with hospital food. But anyway, so then from the hospital, I went to a halfway house for 2 weeks in Sarasota. And when I came back home, I went to 12-step meetings religiously, went to aftercare, did the whole thing, worked what I thought I worked, the 12 steps. And, my whole life changed. But, but I thought it changed in the sense that I was not drinking, but, and this is so embarrassing, this is so embarrassing to admit this stuff, right? So I was about 7 years sober, and and I was one of these, whiny, even sober. I was like, well, I was just complaining, and nothing was right, and nothing was good enough, and blah 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 blah. So one day I'm on the phone. This is 7 years sober about, and I'm complaining, this litany of complaints to my sponsor, and she says to me, "Diane, I really hate to tell you this, but I really have been thinking about it, and I want to tell you something I think it's really important for you to know." I was like, "What?" She said, "You haven't taken the second step." And I was like, "What? What?" And the first step is admitted that I was powerless over alcohol and that my life had become unmanageable. Second step is made came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Well, of course, she was right. I had been stuck in that powerlessness. And a lot of people who go into recovery get stuck into the powerless part, because the first step says, that I was powerless over alcohol. Well, I had taken the alcohol out and said I was powerless. And you know what I mean? I stayed in that I am powerless. I am powerless. So her telling me that changed my whole life. And I started repeating the second step, came to believe that a power greater than myself could. And that literally changed the course of my life. So that I was able to meet a lady. What had happened was I'd had a miscarriage, This was 7 years sober, and I was just absolutely devastated, and went to see this man who did breath work. I didn't know what breath work was. If you're not familiar with it's a really quick way of, now I know, it's a really quick way of getting into trance. It's a really quick way of getting into really deep trance. It's called pranayama in Sanskrit, but I didn't know any of this then. But I started doing breath work with this man, and this is this what I'm going to share with you right now. I didn't share I shared this with my father before he crossed over. And I think he was there may have been one other person that I shared this with. And I didn't share it publicly until 2020 when I went to one of my first IANDS meetings. So this is so sacred to me that I couldn't speak it out loud. I couldn't speak it out loud, but I want to share it with you. So I'm doing a breathwork session, and this light started to coalesce. I'm lying down flat on a table. I've got, my eyes are covered. I'm doing this breath work. But in my mind's eye, I can see this light, and it starts to coalesce. And it coalesced into the Blessed Mother. And she took her body, her light body, and she put her light body, starting with the feet. She started with her light body feet into my feet, and she laid in my body. And she said to me, "Think on me." And at that time, in addition to seeing this guy with breath work, I had also met this guru and was learning about Kundalini and chakras and all this stuff. And so, this is so embarrassing. So here's the Blessed Mother. Her light body's in mine. She says, "Think on me." And I'm ecstatic. I mean, the love. I mean, it was just like, so, but this is the embarrassing part. So I said to her, "What about the Kundalini?" But this is what she said. She said, "I am the Kundalini." And it was such an incredibly ecstatic experience. I felt like the cells in my body were just, I honestly, I felt like if I vibrated any quicker, any faster, I could just rise up to the ceiling. You know what I mean? It's like the space. I mean, it's like, physical things. I felt like, and I mean, I didn't, but I felt like I could just move through them. Like there were no, I was just like, and that looking back on it, now that was the early 90s, right? That was probably 91. And looking back on it, I can see that she was the catalyst. That experience was the catalyst for my other spiritually transformative experiences. That was the beginning. But again, on one hand, I'm a real slow learner. On the other hand, it was such a blessing that I have been a slow learner, because it wasn't like my life was disrupted. It could have been. It could have been extremely disrupted, because the guru that I met, well, let me just share this part with you. And I adored her, but there was always something that I couldn't join her world. I just couldn't do it. And when I tell you what happened, you'll know why. So I did a past life regression, again, doing breath work. This is before I became a certified hypnotist. And I went back into a previous lifetime in which this woman, this guru, was Marie Antoinette. And I was her servant. I was one of her servants. I was second in her servant category. You know, it was like she had her main servant, and I was beneath her main servant. And when they guillotined her at the head because she was royalty. And even though everybody hated her, you know, because she was so pompous and she had this condescending attitude. I mean, you know, she's the one who said, let him eat cake. If you're not familiar with Marie Antoinette, please. She's a real character. So they guillotined her at the neck because she was royalty. They didn't want her to suffer. But they grabbed me and they guillotined me at the legs because I was considered a traitor, because I was a normal, everyday person, but I was getting 3 meals a day. I was being fed. You know, I had a place to sleep at night. And the interesting thing is that in that regression, I didn't have any resentment toward the people who guillotined me. I mean, I totally understood why they did it. I totally understood. And I just accepted it, you know? So this guru taught me another type of meditation. And the type of meditation that she taught me was called Sahaja Yoga, which means surrender. She taught me surrender meditation. And again, it was a life-changing event for me because the other meditation that I had learned was, you know, one-pointed meditation, whereas surrender meditation is you surrender your body, your mind, and your feelings to the divine, which is all in the 12 steps. I just didn't catch it at the time. I mean, the third step is made the decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand him. That's surrender, right? But I didn't connect the dots. Isn't that silly? I mean, it took me years to connect the dots on that. So I learned this surrender meditation, and I had so many incredible spiritually transformative experiences. I learned how to see prana. I was able to see prana, chi. I learned to see halos, you know, etheric bodies and little energy things. And it was just really it was a marvelous, marvelous, but you must understand at that time, I was able to meditate for 2 hours a day. And I meditated for 2 hours a day for, I don't know if it was 6 to 8 months. My son was in school. I had a son by then. He was born in 86. And so I was able to, I had the time. I could meditate 2 hours a day, and that's what I did. And that's when I learned how to see all these energetic movements. And it was just, and it's still, I don't still see what I used to see, but I see other things. And I'm sure if I started meditating 2 hours a day again, it would, you know, or even less than that. So anyway, I became a certified hypnotist. I wanted to teach breath work. You know, I thought this is like, oh my gosh, this holotropic breathing is like life-changing. But one thing led to another. So I wound up becoming a hypnotist when I learned that the levels of consciousness in hypnosis are the same levels of consciousness in meditation. So that I was, you know, you don't have to go meditate for 30 years in order to have these spiritual experiences. You can have them practically from the get-go, you know, depending on how open you are and how accepting and willing. So that was a real life changer. And I also studied NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which really gets a bad rap. I don't know why it gets such a bad rap, but NLP is actually the science of success. And one of the really, really cool life-changing things that I learned in NLP and that I just want to share this with you. A lot of you guys already know this. I mean, I'm such a baby. You know, to me, a lot of this stuff is new. But the NLP teaches the concept of the ideal self. And that blew me away. It's like, you mean I could choose? I could choose the qualities that I want to have? I remember thinking, I grew up on fairy tales, Grimm's fairy tales. And I remember thinking, where's my fairy godmother? It's like, it seemed like all these people, and they're happy and they're smiling. It's like, what happened? You mean your fairy godmother must have come along and bopped you on the head with her wand, with her magic wand? Where's mine? I want to be bopped on the head. I want to be, I had this childlike attitude toward things. Like, I didn't know until I started studying NLP that I could choose to be happy. I didn't know that. I didn't know happiness was a skill. I didn't know I could learn to be happy. Blew me away. Absolutely blew me away. And that led to me studying A Course in Miracles, which I'm still teaching today. I started studying it back in the 90s. I didn't start teaching it until 2012. So I've been teaching it for about 14 years now. And wrote my first book, Meditations for Miracles, which was inspired by A Course in Miracles. And it's a book of daily meditations. You only read one page a day, which nowadays a lot of people don't like to read, which I find that fascinating, that there are people who don't like to read. So this is perfect for if you don't like to read, because you only read one page a day. So after I wrote Meditations for Miracles and became a certified hypnotist, started seeing clients privately, doing a lot of spiritual work, which is why I call myself a soul level hypnotist. I mean, I do the regular stuff too, like quitting smoking and weight loss and that kind of thing, which, yeah, I'm a former smoker myself. If I could have figured out how to smoke in the shower, I would have done it. There's this thing we call cross addiction. When you're addicted to one thing, you're addicted to everything. That's what they say. I'm living proof of that. If you have any questions, just ask me and I'll tell you. And then I guess this is pretty important, so I want to share this. I had 3 encounters with Jesus Christ. And I had never been a Jesus freak. I went to Catholic school, but I threw out the baby with bathwater. None of that's for me. So I'm lying in bed, waking up from a dream. And in the dream, the words pop in my mind, Peter and me. And I'm a grammar nerd, right? I was an English major, editor for these 2 associate editor and desk editor and reporter for these 2 little newspapers. And so, grammar is like, I'm a grammar nerd. And I remember waking up in the dream and I remember thinking, oh, that's correct. Because most people misspeak that all the time. It's one of my pet peeves. So I'm waking up and I'm hearing Peter and me. Peter's my adult son. The love of my life. I mean, it's just like, so I'm waking up and hearing Peter and me. And I'm thinking in my dream mind, oh yeah, that's correct. And then Jesus Christ appears in my mind's eye on my left-hand side. I'm lying in bed. And he says to me, are you afraid of Peter? And I thought for a minute. I thought, no. I said, no. And he said, then why are you afraid of me? And I was dumbstruck, gobsmacked. I mean, I was like, and then he just kind of dissipated. And I was shocked, awake, and I thought, he's right. there is a part of me that is afraid of God, whatever you want to call it. There's a part of me that is afraid of that. So, of course, I had to fess up to that. It's like one thing after another, And I thought that was it. I thought, okay, well, that's so cool that Jesus came to me. Of course, you can't tell this to anybody, right? I mean, it's like, so not long after that, I was attending a Brian Weiss convention, a seminar here in Orlando, Florida. And he was doing a past life regression. This is my second Brian Weiss seminar that I had gone to. This was 2018. And he was doing a past life regression. Well, instead of doing a past life regression, Jesus Christ came to me. And the love that I felt, and this gigantic triangle came over, and I had one friend on one side, one friend on the other side. We just happened to meet there, sat together, and Jesus Christ came to me and he said, it's not that I love you, it's that you are love. And then he said, I am everything that is, and you are too. And then before he could finish, Brian Weiss brought us out of the meditation. And I was so, again, I was vibrating. I mean, the love was so intense. I mean, I was just like ecstatic. And I everybody looked like, everybody was so beautiful. I mean, here's this whole auditorium, there are probably 600 or 800 people there. And everybody was just like beautiful. It's like I could see their souls. And it was like, I just had this gigantic smile on my face. I mean, I must have looked like a crazy person. I mean, I was walking around like smiling at everybody. It was like, I mean, it was just absolutely amazing. And then, of course, he couldn't finish because Brian, when you're in a group like that. So the next time, which was it was probably the next day, I went into a meditation. He came to me again. And he's wearing these cream colored robes. And he's got like the Sacred Heart, if you're familiar with, like when he's wearing these cream colored robes, and then there's the Sacred Heart, which is like the red heart, in the middle of his chest. So he comes to me again, appearing like that. And he takes his hands to put them around his heart for me to get my attention on my heart. Now you have to understand, I love humor. I love to laugh. The laughing thing is a whole separate, different. We don't have time to get into that. But so he says to me, he's got his hands over his heart, and he says, it's a sacred heart. It's not a suffering heart. And that was a joke. That was a joke to me. Because in my family, we had elevated suffering to an art form. It's like, the more you suffered, the better you were. And if you wanted to get really close to God, you had to suffer. It was like suffering was. And so when he said that, it had the very, very deep personal meaning to me. It was like, and then I realized I didn't have to suffer anymore. I didn't have to suffer anymore. So that's when I incorporated that story into 5 Steps to Freedom, which is an outline, a technology, a technique to let go of negative thinking patterns. And then COVID hit. One more thing I want to share with you, because COVID hit. I had to close my office. It's 2020. So I spent a lot more time at home. I was still conducting private sessions on the phone. And then that's when, of course, we all went to Zoom, started doing group meetings on Zoom. But I had more time at home. And I started seeing what I called the grid. And I didn't have a clue as to what it was. And the interesting thing is, I could see the grid with my eyes open or with my eyes closed. It didn't matter. And I didn't know what it was. It was like these parallel lines, and it's 3-dimensional. And they would kind of move and, shift these lines. And sometimes they would get wider and I had no clue as to what it was. But I started seeing it. And of course, again, who you can tell this kind of stuff to, right? So I'm out, and I'm also a flower gardener, kind of, not like my dad, but I have orchids and tropical stuff in my backyard. So I'm out there, and I started seeing the grid, and I'm noticing all these spiders, and I'm noticing their spider webs, and I started realizing how magnificent they are, these spiders, and how they can build these magnificent homes out of nothing. Anyway, that led to my book, My Life with Spiders and Other Creatures. And here I am today. I still see the grid. I see lights, of course, and prana, and also called chi. And but I've learned, I think, that my point in sharing all this with you is that you don't have to go through what I went through to learn what I've learned. I don't think. I mean, it's like I have learned to kind of condense and connect the dots so that I can share with you techniques and ways of learning things and changing your life and transforming your life on earth. See, my big thing is practicality. That's one reason I didn't follow that guru, because I said, well, how can I apply all this in my daily life? She said, you can't. I said, bye. I'm out of here. I really believe that we can transform. I'm a living proof of it. I am living proof of it. And I'm telling you, if I hadn't learned what I'd learned, if I hadn't learned how to meditate, if I hadn't learned I can change my life by changing the way I think, if I hadn't started studying and teaching A Course in Miracles and working with hypnosis and NLP, if I hadn't started helping people and therefore helping myself, I have no clue where my life would be right now. But I am living testimony that you can change your life and live in bliss and laugh. Laugh and have a great time and live in ecstasy. It's not hard. You just have to learn how to do it. It's not hard. So I would like to open this up to questions. I wasn't able to share everything. There's just too much. I just kind of wanted to hit on the highlights. There are lots of other things that happened and lots of other spiritually transformative experiences, but I just kind of wanted to hit the highlights. So, Sean?
Yeah, so yeah, please put your questions in the chat to us, and then we'll ask Diane your questions. But starting off with surrendering and turning it over. Would you say that was the catalyst when everything started changing? What was it that really started everything to change for you?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that learning that I could not get from an outside source, i.e., people, places, things. That was critical for me because I always depended on others, solve my problem. It's like, I'm out of mayonnaise, this is a huge problem for, you know what I mean? Just ridiculous stuff that I always searched outside of myself. And the surrender to, you can call it a higher power, source, the universe, spirit, whatever. When I learned to trust that was within me, that was a key turning point in my life when I learned that it's not outside of me. It's in me. Today's lesson in A Course in Miracles is I am spirit. When I learned that, the kingdom of God is within me, it says that. It says so much of this stuff, it says in all these, not just the Christian Bible, all these other courses of study, if you study them, it's all there. But I was too outwardly focused to see it. And with a surrender, and then, the visitation, after I surrendered, that's when I learned that meditation, went to that breath worker. That's when I had the experience with the Blessed Mother. And it was like, I think that was the quickening, that was the catalyst. It was like, this, the entire, it's like God is within me. Source is within me. And there's a difference between trusting myself and trusting source within me. A Course in Miracles says we have two minds. We have a God mind and we have an ego mind. And I lived in my ego mind up until then. I didn't know I had a God mind. I didn't know it. And if somebody had told me, probably when I wasn't ready, maybe somebody did tell me. I just didn't hear it. So that was the turning point. Yeah. And see, people totally misunderstand surrender. So let me give you another word for surrender. Trust. Trust the higher power within you. Trust the universe within you. It's not outside. It's like we are awakening. It's like when the Blessed Mother came into me, it was like it was an awakening. It's like it woke me up from this dream. And the Course in Miracles says we live in a dream. Frankly, mine's been a nightmare. Up until, how many years ago? 30 years ago.
Well, what I love about your story is even though you call yourself a slow learner, you didn't have to have an NDE. So taking it from a real slow learner that needs to be hit over the head with several NDEs, you're not that slow. And I think what's so amazing about your story is that you are proof that anybody, no matter how low you think you've gone, or fallen, that everybody can have these experiences.
Absolutely.
Making the choice, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. If a person like me, I was so angry and stubborn, and rebellious to my own detriment. I hurt myself. I was the picture of self-destruction. And if these experiences could happen to me, but it still took me a long time it's not like, I was instantaneously changed. I'm still changing. I'm still learning. I'm still waking up.
Right. Yeah, I think when we're done suffering, right, is when we're ready to surrender.
Yeah, I thought we were supposed to suffer. Look at the saints, look at the martyrs. It's like, it's like, oh, you gotta really feel bad. in order to be good. It's like, what? What? Kimberly has her hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to call on Kimberly. If you guys can, put your questions in the chat. But Kimberly, do you want to unmute and ask yours? There you go. There you go.
Sorry about that. I'm used to raising my hand and
Oh yeah, no, you're fine. Yeah.
yeah. Well, so I wondered if you thought, Diane, if there's any connection between you talked about the grief you experienced when you were separated from your mom, and then Mother Mary showing up. Like, do you think that?
Oh, perfect. Thank you for connect. Thank you.
I mean, I don't know. I just
yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yes. And here's another, thank you so much for bringing that up. And here's another aspect of that I looked in retrospect makes sense to me. I think she had to come first before Jesus Christ. She had to, because you're right, that grief of being separated from my mother, which was an unconscious grief. I didn't even know I had it. And then I think you're absolutely right that, the Blessed Mother was the balm for that grief. And totally undeserving. I mean, I didn't do anything to deserve that. It's not an effort, it's not a reward. You know what I mean? It's like it's a blessing. It's just a blessing. Thank you. Thank you for
Along those lines. So when you were having that first experience with your dad, did that cause you to maybe not trust yourself as much, what you were experiencing at an early age?
probably unconsciously. I didn't have I just accepted it. It's like, oh, my eyes playing tricks. But you know what? I never saw those again until as an adult seeing the grid. I've seen lights, and not to that intensity. I don't think I've ever seen them. I mean, it was so intense. But yeah, probably, I'm sure. It's like, oh well. And the same thing with the beetle. It's like, well, I mean, and it's like, but imagine if you had a child. I mean, in our society today, you can't let your kids run out in front of Mack trucks. You've got to protect them from society. And I'm hoping that things are changing now but looking back, how I look at it now, I don't really think that bug had a human face. But what I do think is that I was seeing the spiritual nature of that bug. I was seeing the divinity in that bug. And the same with the ants. It's like, how can, my life with spiders, 46 poems about spiders? What? I can't even believe I did that, you know? So, but you see now looking back, I can see, oh, it started way back then. My connection started way back then.
Yeah, I think in my experience, we naturally have these experiences, but then we do stop trusting ourselves because the ones that we trust, our parents and so forth, usually discount those experiences.
Exactly.
And that certainly happened to me.
Yeah.
So can you explain your definition of the matrix? I think, or the grid, because some people, I think some people may not understand what that is, or they might have different.
Sure. The way I understand it's a little bit different. Greg Braden calls it the divine matrix. And I read his book just recently. I mean, I just recently, like a year ago, read his book. Which was fabulous if you haven't read it. But to me, it's like it's how energy works. It's like they're like energetic lines. And like when you learn about vibration and you learn about, that's the beauty of like the law of attraction. I mean, I see everything now in terms of the grid, which is how are we vibrating? What line are we vibrating on? If we're vibrating on a line of love, then of course we're going to attract whatever is on that same vibrational line, which would show up like as a line in the grid. But I don't see it as we are being controlled by some external force at all. I don't believe that at all. I believe that we may be stuck in the grid. I sure was, but I was stuck by my own thinking. There was no external force that was keeping me stuck. I was keeping me stuck. So I don't believe that we're stuck by something, but I think it's the way energy works. It's the way energy moves. It's like a container for the physical universe.
When did you first realize that you're not your thoughts, right? Because for the longest time, you thought the thoughts were real and that was you. So at what point did you realize? No.
Excellent question. When I learned surrender meditation, one of the things that I learned was we are not our thoughts, we are not our feelings, and we are not our body. So then what are we? It's like, okay, we are the awareness. We are the awareness of our thoughts. We are the awareness of our body. We are the awareness of our feelings. Do you realize how empowering that is? You talk about personal power. I mean, that for me, that's the key to the whole thing. It's like, and then and that's exactly what the Course does. A Course in Miracles. When I say the Course, I'm referring to A Course in Miracles.
Which, by the way, everyone, she teaches A Course in Miracles every week. It's tomorrow at 7:30 Eastern. So if anybody would like to join,
it's 3:30 Eastern. 3:30 to 5:30
Eastern.
Yeah, it's
right,
a daytime class. Yeah,
because it's 9:30 a.m. my time. Yeah, sorry. Anyway, if any of you would like to attend, you can email.
Diane. Yeah, email me. I should put my email in the chat box.
Yeah.
It's real easy. It's Diane@DianeRoss.com, which is a great way to.
Okay, so let's see. Okay, so I think a very good question from Dava is she wants to know, is there any benefit for praying for another?
Absolutely. See, do you realize, but it's how you pray, I think. But I don't think any prayer I think every form of prayer is beneficial. Don't misunderstand me. I don't think there's a wrong way to pray, but I do think there is a really efficient way to pray. And the way that I pray for people, when I remember, is to see them as a light, to focus on their soul self, their God self, to hold them in that light. Absolutely. And now what I've been doing is because it changes for me over the years. So now the spontaneous thing that's been happening to me is I actually, when I think of someone, I'm praying for them, I actually see like a ray of light going from me to them.
And somebody asked about a meditation, which of course maybe they didn't hear that you have a whole book of meditations, correct?
Correct. It's actually, yeah, it's called Meditations for Miracles. It's on Amazon. And
yeah, so if whoever asked that, if you have a copy of the newsletter that I put out, which we can put another link in, you can click on there and it'll take you to all of her books.
Also, I have a meditation. I would love to offer it to you as my gift. I call it instant meditation, and it's 20 minutes. It's a guided meditation. If you want to email me and just ask me for the instant meditation, I'll email it back to you. It's very similar to the meditation that I learned back in 1970, only I've tweaked it because I've learned so much over the years. So I've tweaked it. People love it. It's very relaxing, very centering, very calming. People love it. I'd be happy. My gift to you to send you that MP3 through email.
Awesome. And by the way, I stuck the link in the chat for everyone for Sahaja Yoga. You're one of the few people that I know that have done it. I love Sahaja Yoga. And that for those of you that don't really know about it, it's so simple. But the more you forgive and surrender, the more you can actually feel your Kundalini energy.
Yeah.
And it's simple. And the link that I put in the chat, they have free Sahaja yoga meditations pretty much every day that you can attend. So it's definitely something worth checking out. Okay, so let's see what else.
Okay, while you're looking, I just want to make a reference to the grid. I found out later it's called Indra's net in the Hindu tradition. I didn't know this. I mean, but it actually is a real thing that's been around that people have known about for centuries, called Indra's net. And they talk about jewels being in Indra's net. And I've actually seen, I didn't call them jewels, but they were like lights. I saw them as lights in the net, in the grid. So, I mean, it's like,
Can you type that in the chat so everyone can
yeah.
Google it? Somebody wanted to know how they forgot how you came across Jesus. Were you having an out-of-body experience or what happened?
Me. He came to me. That's what's so wild about this. It's like totally unexpected. I was having this, you see, if you knew how stubborn and rebellious I was, and you know the thing that the phrase Peter and me occurred to me first, because my way of coping with the world was to be right. Well, I'm right. You know, because most people would say me and Peter. It's one of my pet peeves. You see people say me and so and so, and it's like I just want to strangle them. You know, it's like no, it is. You always say me last. It's Peter and me. There's also a difference between Peter and I, and which you know, it's not I and Peter. You see, I'm a grammar nerd, right? So I was having this, coming out of this dream where I was in this, oh, that is correct. So my mind was like in a real receptive state coming out of this dream. And that's when he came to me and he used Peter, my son, my adult son. Are you afraid of Peter? And it just caught me off guard. You know, it was like, but I had to think about it. And I thought, no, I'm not afraid of Peter. And then he said, then why
Just that surrendering, that when you totally surrender and are open, that is when they come to you.
Exactly. And I've had incredible, incredible things happen in my dreams because you're in a surrendered state. You know, you don't have an agenda. And you're in alpha and theta, which are the levels at which we meditate. And they are also the levels at which you go into in hypnosis. So,
right. And that's also for everyone, if you didn't catch the beginning, that's what we're going to be doing Sunday, May 17th, is an actual workshop on just that, surrendering. And so I just stuck a link in for that if you want to, because it's going to be an amazing class. And let's see what other. I'm looking for what other questions. Several comments, but is there more questions? I'm not. If you had some questions, type them in again, just because I'm seeing comments, but I'm trying to find. Okay, so for somebody who is stuck in addiction, which is most of us in some form, there's something that we're,
You mean you're a human?
yeah. So, so, what is your best recommendation to help yourself? And I'm referring to loving that part of you that's addicted. If you could talk more about that, like, because I think everybody struggles with something, most of us.
Yeah, I think for me, of course, a lot. See, this is in retrospect. I mean, I have been what they call clean and sober for 42 years, so I do have a lot of experience on both sides. And looking at it from my point of view now, I really understand that addictions really are a cry for God, or whatever you want to call it, the universe. It's a call for that connection with the divine that we think we don't have. We think we don't have that. I thought, if you had told me back then that I was already connected to God, I would have. I don't know what I would have done, but I would not have believed it. I had no clue that I was already connected to God. I just all this stuff. I didn't know that, and I was angry and full of grief that I wasn't even aware I was full of, and had all these other, shame, guilt, you name it. But I I was so covered up with identifying with my ego self, my false self, my hurt self. I thought that was me. And that's the part of us that gets addicted because we don't want to feel that. So I personally would recommend a 12-step program.
Will you explain to everyone what ego is according to A Course in Miracles? Because a lot of people have different interpretations of ego, but how does
Sure.
the Course?
The Course, okay, so this is right out of the Course. Eons and eons and eons ago, we were all one, and we knew it. We knew we were all one with God, and we knew we were all one with each other. We knew we are one. And then the Course calls it, we had the mad, insane idea that we were separate. And instead of laughing at that, that's the funniest thing I ever heard. A part of us believed it. And the part of us that believed that we were separate and alone was terrified. How could that possibly? We were terrified. And we did not want to feel that terror. So what we did was we projected it outward. And that's how we made the world. And the part of us that believed it is the ego. The part of us that believes that we are alone and separate is the ego.
And also the ego, anything that makes you feel bad about yourself, that's the ego also.
Exactly.
God and spirit does not tell you you're ugly or you're fat or you're a loser. That's not God. That's ego. And that's one of the things that helps me the most. If anytime some negative thoughts come in, I realize that's not God. That's
Right.
ego. That's the false beliefs that I still believe.
Another thing that makes ego really simple for me and makes it so much more agreeable and easier to understand is the ego is the part of us that feels unloved. And everybody talks about, oh, you got to crush the ego. You got to dismantle the ego. You got to blah, blah the ego. You got to get rid of the ego. My point of view is no. You gotta love the ego. If the ego was loved, it wouldn't be hurt. If it that's how you incorporate the ego. You don't get rid of it. You don't keep it down. You don't push it down. You don't blah blah. You love it because the ego is the part of us that is hurt.
And the more you try to push it down, the more it's going to come up.
Exactly. The stronger it gets.
Yeah. And, it's funny because Ram Dass, I can't remember his guru, but he asked his guru one day, do you still have an ego? And the Maharishi said, yes, I've just learned not to listen to it. So.
And see, I would disagree with that because what I would say is listen to your ego. The ego is the part of you that is hurt. It's like, the ego is that 2-year-old throwing a temper tantrum. Why is the 2-year-old throwing a temper tantrum? You won't let the 2-year-old play with a sharp knife, right? So the 2-year-old gets really upset. You don't love me. You won't let me play with a knife. It's like, so you take that little 2-year-old and you say, you know what? I love you because you're upset. I'm not going to let you play with a knife, but I love you because you're upset, not in spite of. If you say in spite of, you're eliminating a part of yourself. You're excluding part of yourself that you don't love. And that part of yourself that thinks it's unloved is going to come back and bite you.
Yeah.
That's doing shadow work.
And it definitely is like a little 2-year-old.
It is.
Tantrum.
Like we all have that little 2-year-old throwing temper tantrums all the time. I want what I want when I want it. And I want it yesterday.
So we have lots of wonderful comments, which I'll share with you later, that I'll send to you, and everybody's loving what you're sharing. But I think we'll end it on, or the second to the last is, as Michael wants to know, what do you think the grid ultimately is? Because I think a lot of people still, don't know. So what do you think?
I think it's the energetic representation of our physical world. It's like how energy works. And it's like, I think there's so many things you can use the grid for. Like for fun. Like I was working with a gentleman and he was having memory issues. He was like 80 something. And he's having memory issues. So we did a session and I taught him how to put things that he wanted to remember in the grid so that he could access them. And it's like, and it was just worked like a miracle. And then if you think of like dates, like death dates, birth dates, events, it's like I've always thought it would be so much fun if you had like a 3-dimensional grid and you could plot these in the grid. I'm wondering what kind of pattern we would see. Especially in families, because you know how families so many people share significant dates. And it's like, I wonder if you had a 3-dimensional grid and you plotted all these dates, I wonder if it would show up like stars or triangles, or I think there's so much that we don't know. And when we get these little glimpses, I think it's the grid is like how energy works, how energy travels. Like entanglement, all that stuff can be explained. All that quantum physics stuff can be explained using the grid as a model.
Right.
It's like, I think the grid is a model of the universe.
Yeah, Katie's saying in the chat that Kevin Jeffers wrote a book called The Pattern, which I haven't read, but I know a lot of people like it, and that's what he talks about there. He's spoken at IANDS before. Okay, so two more questions. You mentioned you saw people building things from nothing. What was that again? Is there a name for where that was? It sounds like a plane where you think it. Oh, you think it and it happens.
I was talking about spiders building homes from nothing. They build intricate, amazing structures from nothing.
Right.
I wasn't referring to people, but you know what? I think that's how it all starts with people.
Yeah.
It starts with an idea. It starts with a thought. It's like everything. From my point of view, the physical is manifested through the attention that we give our thoughts.
Right.
Thank you. That wonderful.
Totally. I mean, that's like the word, right? I mean, the minute we think something, we are willing it into existence. Okay, so thank you so much, Diane. I would like to let you give us your closing of, what do you want to share? And of course, everyone, you can go to, you can email her, go to Diane at dianeross.com. And if you want to go to the Course in Miracles class tomorrow, which is great, I actually go to it and love that. And then she does all kinds of other events. And of course, we're going to be doing one May 17th, but it's going to be really great. And, but why don't you send us off with your final message that you would like to share with everyone?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm just absolutely thrilled to be able to share with you possibilities of transformation. And one of the things I'd like to share with you is that regardless of how difficult things are in your life right now, regardless of the struggles, the challenges, and I know some of you are going through really difficult times right now, it's temporary. We are in a temporal realm. We're all dreaming, on the earth plane. And what we're going through, the difficulties that we're going through right now are temporary. And you can get to a place of bliss. I want to say quite easily. I know a lot of you aren't going to believe that, but trust me, it doesn't take effort. It takes, and in my case, it took practice. Because I had a lot of buildup. 7 years of that pretty boring meditation. I had a lot of practice. I don't know if I would have been able to learn what I learned if I had learned the surrender meditation before I had had the one-pointed meditation. I think all the dots connected, but there is so much hope. There's so much love, and it's within you. And you're a beautiful, beautiful soul. You're a beautiful, eternal. We identify with the wrong part of our nature. Okay, delete that. We identify with our negativities. Our negativities are not us. We are our divine self, our God self. That's our true identity. That's what the Course teaches. And when we learn to do that, it'll change your whole life.
And everyone is part. Nobody is excluded.
Right.
So no matter what anybody thinks about themselves, it's false because nobody's excluded. We are all one, as much as it's hard to believe sometimes, but nobody is excluded.
Exactly.
So everything she's telling you is
it's available. It's available to you.
Yes.
It's available to you.
It's just really the decision for truth and to let go of these false beliefs and surrender.
Exactly.
It's funny. It really is so much easier, but it's the ego that makes it hard, right? Like, because we think like you said, like you need to suffer and you need to read all this stuff and you need to memorize it. You need to do the right meditation. And that's always the ego that kind of wants to keep us in that trap.
It's undoing the programming. It's undoing the programming. And that's the value of A Course in Miracles. It's like a technology to undo the negative programming. because it's all within us. You've already got it within you. You've already got it. It's just a matter of learning to tap into it.
Yeah. And it's like Michelangelo said about David when they said, how did you do David? And he said, David was already there. I just took away everything that was not David.
Perfect. I love that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Diane. This has been wonderful. I'm so grateful that you came and were vulnerable and shared your story with us. And thank you, David and Venus and Katie, for helping out. And love you all. And hopefully we'll see you tomorrow at Course in Miracles, and then our sharing group on the 21st, and then at our workshop in May. So have a wonderful night, everyone. I really do love you all, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Aloha.
Love you. Mwah.